Welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast, folks. We have a great show in store for you today. We sit down with a man that has a total of 35 years of service and is still serving today. Lieutenant Colonel David Eaton has been serving our nation since 1988. He has done it all from combat operations on the battlefield to now treating veterans who suffer from post-traumatic stress, primarily from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. This retired U.S. Army paratrooper is making a big difference in the veteran and military community. We hear from him next. But first,
hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
Lieutenant Colonel David Eaton served 27 years in the Army, and he would also serve some time in the National Guard. He would go on to graduate from San Diego State University. Of course, he got his commission. And again, with a combined 35 years of service, he's still giving back today as he wants to stay connected to the veteran and military community. He is now working for the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic at Endeavors in San Antonio, Texas, primarily treating veterans that are suffering from the wounds of war, as well as their family members, because the veteran serves and so does the family, especially when you're in military operations that, you're bringing home a lot of that post-traumatic stress home, and, the families, the wives, the spouses, the children are all affected by these military service members. And it's folks like retired Lieutenant Colonel David Eaton who sit down with these veterans and they help heal them in their current situation. And with that, we are honored to be joined by former and retired Lieutenant Colonel David Eaton, U.S. Army. How are you, sir?
I am fine, sir. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. We share a mutual friend that I know I hold near and dear to my heart. That is a retired U.S. and Navy SEAL, Darren Isham.
That is correct, sir. We started in high school together back at Santana and graduated in 87 and 88, I think, respectively. And then he went off and became basically a superhuman. And I went off and did some things too. Actually, like I said, I linked up with them briefly in Afghanistan while we were each doing our jobs, and I got to help them out a little bit momentarily. So it was fun to have that kind of a link up there. And we've kept in touch briefly. Again, that guy was, huge in the SEAL community, still is. And I appreciate everything that he's been doing then and now with the efforts that he's making, certainly with the veteran community.
Absolutely. You said that, you wrap that up very, very nicely. Yeah, Darren is definitely a superhuman hero in that community. He's a great friend of the show as well as a personal friend of mine. And there's not too many guys out there that have that type of resume. And I was looking over your resume and holy smokes, are you an educated man?
Dangerously educated, I think. I mean, probably now on the downward slope of that. So,
yeah, there's not too many calls I get from Darren that says, you need to get this guy on your podcast, man. This guy is doing some very valuable work in the military and veteran community. And, as we all know, there's a big problem going on in our country when it comes to mental health, primarily too right now in the veteran and military community. So without folks like you that are engaging in this type of work and in this type of practice in a time that there is a lack of mental health counselors out there really does speak to your, to your character and the testament that you want to still serve this vulnerable community, if you will.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do, sir. The Stephen A. Cohen Clinic here in San Antonio and the entire Cohen Veteran Network is focused on exactly what you mentioned. And we are trying to what we call fill the gap as best we can with the 25 clinics we have throughout the United States. And we're diving in. And we're seeing veterans, regardless of their type of discharge. All right. That's one of the things that kind of separates us. All right. If you served one day and maybe things went badly, we're still here for you. We're still here for your family. And they certainly need it. I hate to say, but business is booming. It's booming. And we're doing the best we can. And the folks that I work with to my left and right, a lot of them are veterans too, are certainly connected to the military via family membership themselves. We take it personally, and we do the best we can every day to help, our fellow tribe members and their families, for sure.
Sure. I want to dive deep into mental health today because this podcast is based on adding value, just some real life value to the lives of everyday people that may be needing it most. Today, we have a lot of veterans that are self-isolating, sitting in rooms, but a lot of the times they connect with podcasts, with veteran podcasts, so they could perhaps hear men like you or other folks out there telling their stories of perseverance and resilience to help get them up. Because we all know that we have been down that road. A lot of us have, and it's dark and it's a very lonely place to be. And there is hope out there, and really, you got to find that source of hope. And again, it's through shows like this and with having guys like you that are going to be giving a lot of great information today, again, to the folks that need it most. I know you spent the majority of your life serving this country, 27 years in the U.S. Army. You've been on the battlefields. You've seen combat. You've been all over the world. You were in Operation Desert Storm. You were in Iraq. You were in Afghanistan. You've seen a lot. You've been through a lot. You're very heavily educated. Now, I know we could sit here and talk an hour about just your combat operations, but I think what I would like to do today is really focus on that mental health piece. What inspired you to go from the battlefield to doing what you're now doing now as a mental health counselor?
Well, that's a great question. And it kind of started when I did get the opportunity to go to advanced civil schooling. And I was able to kind of parlay that into the master's that I needed. And the reason why I did it is because I knew that there was a gap and a stigma. I mean, I come from the stigma, right? I come from the era where, willpower can get you everywhere. And it's very true. But I also was able to see that, we still have to get over the hump or over the mountain of this stigma. And I felt maybe this is what I could do, when I got out, when I retired, or however that played out. I still wanted to, again, stay connected to the tribe. And luckily, I worked with some folks who educated me pretty well and mentored me really well, and still mentor me today, to include my peers. And then, it turned into all this, but it was just I don't know about all that. Everything happens for a reason kind of a thing, but it seemed like it played out like that for me. And I was able to get on board and stay current. And now I'm working, like I said, for the CVN network, and it's a great place to work. And I think, we're doing great work, not me, but everybody to my left and right. I serve with good folks today. And that's why. I mean, I saw folks that had clearances that said, I'm not going to go to therapy because I have a clearance, because they'll pull my clearance. And even that, I hit social media pretty hard when I was going through the program. and, guys were committing suicide and all that kind of stuff. And I held the clearance myself for a long time. And I saw folks, and we would talk to each other, and I recognized that, I want to be a person that they'll come to, even if they won't go to a clinic, or even if they won't go to behavioral health, maybe they'll come to me and we'll talk about some things, and maybe we'll get them over the hump. And that just led to becoming a licensed professional counselor, and now, doing what I'm doing. And, I have to be honest with myself. I think the program actually helped me as well too, right? There was a time where if I didn't go through the program to become a counselor, I probably would have gone sideways, for lack of a better term. And to be with the folks that I was with at the time, and to get the education and the experience and the hours, helped me out as an individual. I'd like to think, certainly as a soldier, as a father, and hopefully as a spouse as well.
Sure. You had mentioned something that I have talked about so many times on this program, and it's the veterans out there that are afraid to tell the truth a lot of the times. And I've got that here, and we're going to go back to that, because that's the stigma piece. That's the, I'm afraid that my clearance is going to get pulled piece. That's the, I'm going to lose my job piece. I'm going to get stripped of my livelihood. But before we get into that, because I think that right there is something that is extremely important in fixing this epidemic that is plaguing our country and our communities. But first, I want you to explain what filling the gap means, what you're doing today with the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic. What does filling the gap look like?
Well, we know the VA has been inundated. We know that they are struggling with filling the need in their sector. All right. And we stand ready to help where we can. A lot of our folks get referred to us from the VA. A lot of our folks also, because we see active duty as well, a lot of us get referred to by behavioral mental health here in the San Antonio area too. And that's what we mean by filling the gap, being able to serve those types of communities. Also, the VA doesn't necessarily see couples or families. We see couples and families. And as you mentioned before, the family is impacted. The couple is impacted. A lot of folks are, both serve, and they're impacted. And that's what we mean by filling the gap, trying to do what we can to take the load, or take some of the water from the VA and help them carry it and continue care when, they need it. And we have a fantastic building here. A lot of folks, especially active duty, come, and when they see our building, that sets the tone. It's very professional. It's well put together. It doesn't look like a behavioral health wing at some of the posts that you may go to. And people really appreciate that. And it keeps them coming. So that's what we mean by filling the gap. And like I said, we're not just in San Antonio, and I don't want to, overplug this, but we're 25 clinics from sea to shining sea under the charter of Stephen Cohen that says, we're here to help you regardless of how it went while you served. And I think that also helps too, because a lot of folks who may, didn't get the right type of discharge because of all the right or wrong reasons, their care is limited. And we're there also to help, especially those kind of folks.
Sure. And, a lot of the times when they're getting those dishonorables or bad conduct discharges is because a lot of the times it's associated from the wounds of war. It's associated from post-traumatic stress in combat operations. And that is doing a huge disservice.
It is
to those war fighters, if you will, to kind of leave them out high and dry. So it is great work that you're doing over there at the Stephen A. Cohen Military Family Clinic to to help these veterans. If not, they're going to end up homeless. They're going to end up dead. They're going to end up, going to really bad habits that are going to lead them down a devastating road. And for you guys to come in there and to say, hey, look, I don't care what type of discharge you got. I'm here to help you because I can help, put your train back on the tracks and give you the life that you deserve. I mean, because look, you've given so much of your life and you've sacrificed so much for this country. And we believe that you deserve to live again.
Yes. And that's so true. That's so true. And in our partnership with Endeavors, who's our umbrella organization, our higher headquarters, so to speak, here in San Antonio, we have other programs that can specifically help with rehoming, with a hiring network, and those types of things. So it's really a team of teams effort with our partnership with Endeavors. They have a huge wellness center right next to us, connected in the same building, that are helping also the veteran community with a fantastic gym and some other, neato type of allied health opportunities there in our building. But also with greater networks, like I said, with the rehiring and the rehoming and things like that. So it's an all hands on deck effort that we do here in San Antonio.
25 clinics from sea to shining sea. So you're making this available to so many folks from across the country. Now, is there a cost associated with this?
Well, our tagline for that is we won't let cost be a barrier. Okay. So if you don't have insurance and you don't have any money, we have methods, ways, and endowments to help any vet. All right. That's just the bottom line with that. Now, if you have insurance, of course, we do that too, but cost is not going to be a barrier.
Mm-hmm. And I ask that question is because if you do have a bad conduct discharge or a dishonorable discharge, I don't believe that you rate VA service, correct?
I'm not sure. I can't speak for the VA, but that doesn't matter with us. We're going to treat you. That's just
and I'm not positive on that, but I have heard stories like that before, and that's why there's so many veterans out there that try to reverse those types of discharges so they can get the help that they need at no cost to them for the service that they put in for the country. Now, how do veterans sign up to go to one of your clinics to see you?
We always ask them how they get referred. I would argue a super majority do get referred from the VA, right? They're in, therapy at the VA and it's time to change providers, or, they have a situation where they prefer to come off post from the active duty side. Again, we have partnerships now with our active duty neighbors and communities here with the post close to us, so they can get a TRICARE referral. The veterans themselves, that you can find us on the web. I mean, we have, Endeavors or just the Cohen clinics. If you want to look that up, again, I can take time saying where all these clinics are, but it doesn't really matter. We have a fantastic media team that keeps those websites up and running. And if you're close to one of our clinics, you can get there.
Outstanding. Now,
and also, if I could, just for a second, if you're in a state that has a Cohen clinic, we do telehealth. So in Texas, we have 4 clinics, but we're also twice the size of Afghanistan. And we do tele, which means we can reach people in West Texas. We can reach people at the coast. We can reach people up in the panhandle. And we can work with them telewise and get them help they need, even if they can't get to us driving or face-to-face.
Telehealth has become a extremely positive way to get the help you need. Especially a lot of folks that are dealing with this, with these anxieties and these stresses and the depression of life. They don't even want to leave the house. So sometimes engaging in telehealth for the first 2, 3, 4, whatever, until they can start learning some coping strategies to get out of the house to come see you.
Absolutely. We started slow. We make the connection, and then, like I said, it doesn't have to start with a licensed professional counselor. I want veterans out there that are listening to you to reach out to a peer, to reach out to anybody that's been part of the system and get the encouragement to to get some help, even if it's just talking to a battle buddy or anything like that to get started. And then, of course, work your way towards a professional.
I want to go back to the clearances.
Yes, sir.
When you were saying veterans, a lot of the times are afraid to say that they believe they have a problem. I know a lot of folks that have served or currently still serving that numb their pain, whether it's through alcohol or if it's through pills that have been prescribed to them by their providers. A lot of the times those are abused and are taken with alcohol, so it enhances the numbness, if you will. A lot of veterans and folks in the military are afraid to come clean and say they have because they're afraid that they are going to lose their job. They're going to be stripped of their livelihood and they are going to lose it all. Now, these aren't veterans that are doing, that are showing up to work drunk. I mean, these are what you would call a functional alcoholic, maybe somebody that's holding in a lot of this pain and they're packing it in and then it just begins to just grow. And then before you know it, it's spiraling out of control. How can a veteran who may be a police officer or a firefighter or that former Marine or Navy SEAL or somebody that was in the Army, Navy, anybody who's dealing with these types of stresses of life, get the help they need without fear of losing their job?
Well, first of all, it does take courage to take the step into the space, okay? But they've already shown courage before. I would ask them to dig deep and show it again, all right? Especially if it relates to, the comorbidities, including a dependence on some type of chemical or suicidality. Take the step, all right? Your life is more worth you than you losing your job. But then I also want to say the options of losing a job are very, very low. We've had the security folks from the active duty community come and talk to us and say, if a person holds a clearance and seeks help, absolutely wonderful. That's what they say. We don't want people who are suffering to not receive care. In fact, it's actually the opposite. They want folks that do have a clearance to receive the care that they need. That, in fact, helps them more with credibility than not. All right. Now, there are certainly some discriminators where certain services or units might take greater levels of concern, but it's not an automatic disqualifier. That's the first thing that everybody, I think, needs to understand. It's really not. And it's not like we as counselors call personal security officers and say anything. Everybody who talks to us is protected by HIPAA. So I want people to feel like they can come here or to any, facility like ours and get some help and worry about the clearance later. Because again, that's something that, I think that's more of a perception issue than a reality issue. All right. Now, there are certain, like I said, diagnoses or potentially medications that certain security officers might have greater concern with. But if any veteran has a concern about them holding a clearance and wanting to receive mental help, I encourage them to speak to their security personnel and to get that, talked through. So they have, again, the vein or the venue to move towards the help that they need. That's the only way we're going to be able to break the stigma. It really is. We have to get more educated discussions about it. And we have to have the security people give reassurances that, hey, this is only one layer. We'd rather you be getting help than not.
Example here. A friend of mine, U.S. Marine Corps retired, combat veteran who led a battalion of Marines in Fallujah. As part of his career, I want to say he deployed maybe 4 or 5 different times between Iraq and Afghanistan. He got out and he got his pilot license. He began to fly small planes and he graduated all the way up to flying commercial. It was a dream of his. During 2020, the FAA had a lot of free time on their hands, and they started digging into all of the pilots and their medical records and their training. They found that this retired U.S. Marine had post-traumatic stress on his VA record. He was called in and he lost his job. He lost his job because of the words post-traumatic stress on his service medical record, as well as in his health chart. So a lot of the times, when they say, hey, your job it's not as important as, your life. However, when you have a family and you're trying to do your best to provide, and you're already suffering, the anxieties and the depressions of life, and then you've got those traumatic type events that you've experienced that aren't going to really affect you when you're flying. I mean, a lot of people live with traumatic type situations and they're completely functional and they can still do their job 100%. I mean, just look at police officers and firefighters. They see it every single day. Now, for the FAA to revoke this man's license is only going to add to that anxiety and depression. Now he's got to go out and find a job. Who's going to hire me? And, where do we go from here? So it's almost like adding salt to this wound now that was fine, really. And he was making a great career, with his second career, in his life. But again, that left him really kicked to the streets, and he had to begin to pick up those pieces that were relatively really hard to pick back up. What do you got to say about folks that are losing their jobs because of post-traumatic stress being in their service medical record?
Well, I don't know. I can't speak to what the FAA and what their motivations were, the reasons for that. I mean, what I can say is that maybe there's a misunderstanding out there on PTSD and its treatability. Sometimes people think that PTSD isn't treatable. All right. But it is treatable. And, we want to, speak to that. Like, if somebody is diagnosed with PTSD or they feel like they have PTSD, the first thing we have to say is, well, it is treatable. All right. And maybe that was a misunderstanding. Maybe there was a fear thing there. I'm not sure. I can't speak to it. But again, there are a lot of folks out there that feel that PTSD isn't treatable. But it is. And there are many methods to do so. And I would try and just say, there are a lot of folks who on a day-to-day basis or during a certain portion of their career were exposed to trauma. But again, with the proper intervention and with self-motivation and real work, they can move past that. And just because somebody has PTSD doesn't make them a threat to anybody. So that's the first thing that we need to kind of say. I mean, I don't know, like I said, I don't want to speak to what happened with that story, but just because somebody has been, exposed to trauma or has PTSD in their record, that doesn't make them a threat at all.
Now, my position on it is if it affects your ability to do your job, then I'm all for them being released and getting the help they need and then finding a new career. Because let's face it, you can't be having panic attacks when you're flying an airplane or when you're heading to a call that's, of urgency. So I do believe if it impairs your ability to perform at a high level, then I say yes. I think that's fair to say that you need to get the help and find a new career. But if it doesn't impair your job for you to perform at a high level, I think that they need to just get the counseling and then continue on as as you see fit. Now, do you ever see our country going toward a more of a confidentiality type agreement with the client? The almost that, like, for an example, the client attorney privilege. Like, do you ever see this stigma being completely flattened out by saying you can get help, and it's going to be 100% confidential. Because, a lot of the times, folks that are going through a lot of these type instances are reported by the counselors that get put in the medical records for everybody to see within the hospital system or within the mental health system. So if somebody that is pulling a medical record, whether it would be from the VA or Social Security or a employer, they're going to see that on their chart. Is this ever going to go to complete confidentiality to increase people to get in there to get the help that they need?
Well, we do the best we can. I can't speak to how the nation will handle it. We do the best we can where we're at to make sure that every record is HIPAA protected 100%. Nobody sees our records unless the veteran themselves gives permission for that record to be released through a request of information, an ROI kind of a thing. And that should be how it is everywhere. I mean, again, medical records are pretty well protected, and usually it takes the client or the patient themselves to actually give permission for others to see that. I'm not really aware on how other people can get access to medical records without patient granting them that level of access. So we do the best we can, and we're pretty lockstep in that, which means, that's a I don't want to, we do everything we can to make sure that the veteran themselves and their family members have total access to their records, and only give access to those who the veteran gives access to. That's just how that plays out. So do I think we're going to flatten this? I don't know. HIPAA goes well beyond mental health. I mean, it goes all the way up the chain.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not, if this is something that you think is going to be at a greater level, that's going to be a policy decision that will have to be, talked to with all medical organizations, to include the mental health organizations. And on a personal level, I don't know. It took us a while to get HIPAA squared away in the first place as a nation state and as, professions within the medical community. I don't think we take that lightly, and I don't think we're going to give that up without a pretty strong fight.
Well, a lot of the times, they will force the hand and say, if you don't sign this, you're going to lose your job, because we need to, check out your medical record. We need to see your background and so on and so forth. And having something like that on your record can have a, it could be huge in the hiring process, or the, the 5-year, the 10-year, review of your records, whether you're going to get promoted or, whether you're going to climb that chain in your corporate job or whatever it may be. So I understand that you still need to sign that HIPAA waiver. But again, they kind of force your hand and say, well, if you don't, you're going to lose your job. So we need to see it. But again, it's not always bad. A lot of the times these people can take some medications and be completely fine and work their job. But it's just a sad state that people feel as if they can't get the help they need because they are afraid of what could potentially happen if it gets out that you are suffering from severe anxiety, depression, whatever it may be. That will only add to that level of anxiety, because that's the fear of the future, and then the depression is today and the past, and and all that other stuff. So I was just thinking, perhaps maybe down the road there could be more of that client privilege, client attorney type privilege, client counselor type privilege, to where it's not even happening, to where it's off the record completely. I'm getting help from a guy or from a gal who is helping me improve the quality of my life, so I can go on and live the best life that I possibly can and be a positive influence and contributor in the society and the community that I live and work in. And, as far as anybody else is concerned, it's no one's business what I'm going through right now, and I am getting help, so I am making myself better. So really, at the end of the day, why would you want to come steal my livelihood? Because that is something I hear about so much, and I really think that that's a barrier, And if we could break that barrier, I think you're going to see a lot more people reaching out to get help.
Well, I'd like to see that. Yeah, I think there's a conundrum here, and I don't really want to talk policy, but there's a conundrum here, right? And that is VA compensation. Okay, because people claim PTSD for VA compensation when they leave. And then that, as you mentioned before, that becomes not necessarily a matter of public record. But the issue would be, could we probably think about treating somebody and seeing if it works out for them more so than, a model of seeking compensation, right? And I'm not saying don't seek compensation for those afflicted with PTSD, but in your story, that looks like that's how it came to reality. And that's a kind of an issue that we have here in the veteran community is, if they get compensated for it, that's great for them. But if they get treated for it, maybe that'll get taken away. And that's a problem too. So, I mean, this is policy levels well above you and I, but this is also what the veteran is kind of balancing. Like, what happens to the compensation if I get treated? And, those types of things. Again, and I don't have any solution for that. It's something that we talk about all the time in the clinic because, we say, well, sure, you're compensated, but we want to treat you for that. We want you to be, I can't use the term better, but we want you to say you're better. Right. And I don't know. That's just kind of where we are right now with when veterans get out and those kinds of things, what they have to try and balance or what they're trying to balance. And it's not like we as clinicians want them to lose any level of compensation. We just want them to get treated and we want them to be able to say that they're better.
Sure.
So we have to maybe decouple that somehow. And I don't have the solution for that.
Yeah. And better doesn't always mean cured. It just means that you're managing
exactly
what you're going through. And if we learn how to manage it, you can live that life of gratitude and live the life that you were intended to live with the happiness and the peace and the love and the joy in your heart, rather than living in a sad state in a dark room while self-isolating, debating your life choices and what may be coming next, because that's a place that none of us want to be in.
Absolutely.
So it's all about learning coping strategies and managing that. Can you give us and our listeners out there some recommendations or some practices that can help some folks that are dealing with stress, anxiety, and depression? Do you have any coping strategies that you could recommend for our listeners out there today?
Well, sure. I mean, the basic one is peer-to-peer. If you're not ready to go in and talk to anybody on a professional level, reach out to a peer and just have a conversation, a sit-to. Talk to them about what you're feeling, what you're going through. All right. Maybe they have an experience because you never know what they're carrying or what they've carried in the past and what's helped them. All right. Some of the other things as it relates to, PTSD and immediate coping strategies, I would just say, there are things like meditation, grounding, those kinds of things, all of which are very rudimentary in nature, but absolutely, have a positive impact if you know how to employ them. And those are simple things like box breathing. There's a lot of box breathing that's talked about on the web, and we shame breathing sometimes. We're like, oh, just breathe, dude. But breathing works. I mean, these are low level, very influential and capable small things that people can do as far as that. On social media, the social media is kind of a two-edged sword, right? Because there's so much good and there's so much bad on there. If they're in a situation where they're not reaching out to a lot of people, there are veins within social media, I think, that can help, which means they don't have to expose themselves to anything. They can find communities there and reach out and potentially connect with people through social media and start the process there as well too. You know, and the last thing is, you know, if you have an inclination to think like you need some help, again, show the courage and go get some. All right. Show the courage and go get some. And I'm not daring anybody or shit testing anybody as far as that goes. I'm just saying, if you think it is, well, give us a shot, you know, and maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just something that you're working through, and that's 10, 15, 20 minutes and it's over. I just don't want people to stay, you know, in their bubbles and not seek anything. So that's the first step. A lot of this stuff can be found online. So again, social media is a double-edged sword. I don't want you drinking in all the poison and avoiding some of the good stuff that's there. Find some of the good stuff. And if that works for you on an individual basis, great. Reach out to peers and then reach out to a professional.
What type of success, David, have you had with counseling veterans along with their families? Do you do this at the same time, or is this completely separate?
Well, it all depends on what the family or the wants. A lot of times there's, you know, people come in for couples, and then we recommend maybe you should each do individual for a little bit and then come back and do couples when you're a little bit more ready. Sometimes it's the whole family that we see, you know, and that can range from a 2-person family to a 6 or 7-person family. Mm-hmm. And we give everybody a voice in that, you know, so we're talking to the young children and we're talking to the veteran all at the same time, likely all at the same table if they're here face to face with us, or all on the same set of screens if we're doing tele. And I would argue a good session or two of psychoeducation as it relates to what they're trying to manage on their end can help. Certainly. There's no pixie dust here though. You know, there's no, I'm going to go see a counselor and everything's going to be, they're going to give me the secret sauce. No, there's a lot of work. That's why we call it work. And the work doesn't necessarily come from the sessions. It comes from the intersession period. Like what happens in between sessions when you're working with yourself, working with your spouse, working with your family. And again, that part of it is getting folks to the confidence level and the free level, right? Giving themselves permission. Because a lot of times it's like, I don't know if I'm going to give myself permission to do this yet. That's the biggest step, is convincing veterans to give themselves the permission to step into that space and then start the work. And then it almost parts the sea. They're like, wow, okay, well, I get it now. All right, well, that's great, you know. And then that starts, well, it starts a lifetime process. You know, mm-hmm. I'd be kidding you if you could do short-term therapy and have it be done and never, you know, reflected on afterwards. I would argue it's a lifetime kind of a thing. And the more that you can get couples, spouses, and families involved in the psychoeducation part of it, in the mutual support part of it, the better.
You must be willing to make yourself better. Only you can save you. You are a tool.
That's true.
And, you know, you can use the tool. You can open up to the tool. And if you engage in a way, you know, that would be a positive for the veteran or the family member to go in there and to use those tools in your daily life and practice what you learn in there, I think you would see some positive results. Now, in my case, I suffer from severe anxiety, and I have for quite some time. Some severe bouts of depression, and there's no real rhyme or reason why I should be suffering from this. It's just something that my body, it goes through. Now, I have had counseling in the past with my providers that I trusted and that I hold them in, you know, very, very near and dear to my heart, because I've opened up to these folks. And then it almost seems as if once you really begin to build that relationship, they're gone. They're moving on. They're getting promoted. They're going to a different place of employment and you have to start over. Starting over is very hard for a man like me to retell all your stories and what puts you in the position that you're in, and all the trauma, and everything that you've been through in your life. Do you ever encounter veterans that are starting over because their provider, left or they moved on and they have to start all the way over again? And sometimes they just may not want to. I mean, it takes a long time to build trust is what I'm getting at.
You're spot on. And a lot of times what we do here is, from veterans that come to us, referrals from the VA, their gap between seeing their provider can be months long. And when they do get a chance to see their provider, it's either a 10, 15 or 20 minute type of a session. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, I'd be lying if I didn't say there was some turnover in the mental health profession. There is. Mm-hmm. And the VA too. All right. The VA's been taking a beating. I think they're trying to do the best they can to get back up on their feet and get back to a capable level. So yes, we do hear that story of provider switch. Now, again, I can't speak to what the VA is doing to manage that, but at the CVN level and here in San Antonio, certainly at our clinic, we do the best we can to maintain what we call a continuity of care, which means if you come in, although we're short-term focused therapy, we're going to be here for 3 to 4 months, and we're going to do 12 to 15 sessions, and we're going to be your counselor. Unless, the client says, hey, I don't think this is a good fit. Can I go to a different counselor? And we will certainly honor that in a heartbeat, because sometimes, fit absolutely matters. It really does. And sometimes the fit just doesn't work. And we do that too, just to make sure that the client feels comfortable and confident on coming in and seeing the same provider for the time that we see them. So yeah, we do address that.
I know I've probably done myself a disservice, because suffering from anxiety, it is so exhausting. I mean, I wake up exhausted. I go to bed exhausted. I may not look like I suffer from anxiety, but I do. The outside appearance, a lot of the times, you never can tell. Sometimes I don't cut my hair for a while, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I need to get a haircut because it's going to make me feel better today. Yeah, it's going to boost my confidence.
That is a good haircut, by the way. Looking sharp.
Thanks. Well, hey, look, I had you coming on. I had to clean up.
I don't know about that.
But, again, I'm saying I probably am doing myself a disservice because I can't sit down with another counselor right now, and even though my doctor said I should probably sit down with another counselor because it's going to help with my anxiety and, and with my depression. And again, I've got the perfect family, 25 years of great marriage and, married to my best friend and 4 awesome kids that are so successful and that are so kind-hearted and just are beautiful citizens of this country. And here's dad that has depression. It's like, I shouldn't be, but I do get these horrible bouts of depression, like I said, and the anxiety. It's a daily thing. And it's like, you don't ever have them both at the same time. It's either really bad anxiety or it's really bad depression. It's just kind of weird. It's like never really simultaneously. It's really weird on how it works, but I just can't, I can't sit down with somebody else, with somebody brand new and start all over again. And I think that's a big problem that veterans are having. They've had the same person for 3 years and they know them inside out and they look forward to going and speaking with their provider. And then one day they show up and you have a new one and you're like, and then you're in there and what's the first thing you're going to do? I know a guy like me, it's like, you're done. You put that wall up, you're not engaging. You're like, yeah, this ain't going to work. And then what do? They don't show up to the next one, cancel. And they say, no, I'm opting out. I'm going to find my own ways to start dealing with this, whether it's through the grounding, whether it's reaching out to a peer, whether it is doing that meditation. What I have found that works for me, it's not the cure all, but I go on walks every single day. Absolutely. And several years ago, I started to intermittent fast. I started to clean up my diet.
Yeah.
And then I began to start taking my life back one day at a time and 1% at a time. And that is what has kept me disciplined. And I know I have these bouts with anxiety and depression, but I do take medicine for it.
Wonderful.
Unfortunately, some people have to take medicine for it. And I used to be I never talked about my anxiety and my depression ever. And then when I went through, a pretty tough life event, I began to get more vulnerable because I had so many people reaching out to me that were so interested in my story, that the only way that I was ever going to help them and give them words of value was to show my own vulnerabilities and said, hey, look, this is what I'm going through right now. And that enabled them to open up. So again, like you said, that peer-to-peer talking, it really does work. I mean, sometimes it's, the matter of life and death. Some people will reach out. I'm not in a good place right now. Can you help me? And I get those calls a lot from people. And, and I feel like I've been called, and I'm not a professional. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy. But sometimes that's all you need is just a guy. Sometimes that's all you need is a friend.
That's it. And don't underestimate your power of influence either, Brian. I mean, your example and your personal story and you making the changes that you did in your own life are extremely valuable. And we love to hear that. All right. We love to hear it. But you're right. It is work. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily work out correctly with the first counselor that you see or the second. I would just say, don't give up. Don't give up on the process, but certainly don't give up on yourself and keep doing what you're doing. Right. And oh, by the way, you're in the Texas network. So if you need to see somebody, by all means, look us up. We can get you hooked up telehealth anytime, any day, so don't think that you're out there by yourself. Again, take a look at the product yourself and then, see what it can do for you.
I most definitely am. I mean, this could have been the reason why we were connected, Absolutely. And, yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to look into the Stephen A. Cohen network there. But I want to get a little bit more, we got 7 minutes left here. And yes, you had talked about some of the coping strategies, a little bit. There's a veteran or really anybody, a civilian, doesn't matter. People, if a human is listening to this right now and they're going through some really bad times in their life, what should they immediately do?
Reach out to somebody they trust, whoever that is, be it family member, sibling, mom, dad, pastor, coach, coworker, anything. Reach out, start the conversation. All right. That's the big step. Start the conversation. Potentially after that, listen to some influencers, not unlike yourself. Listen to podcasters or those super personalities out there that have spoke to it. All right. On many podcasts. All right. Again, I think what you guys are doing across the podcast network itself, with John Bernthal, with, even Rogan and some of the other ones. I mean, they're really talking about mental health more openly now. Men and women of respect and stature that are opening up to the vulnerabilities that you talked about, the Brene Browns of the world, those kinds of things. When she talks about her struggles, if you can't see somebody immediately to your left and right, look to one of those super personalities or podcasters, not unlike yourself, that have gone through the process internally and externally and had victories and losses, and then find their strength to seek, what they can do within themselves. And if they want to seek out professional help, because that really is the only way we're going to break the stigma. Again, I appreciate all podcasters like yourself and super personalities like Simon Sinek and Brene Brown and John Bernthal and Rogan and all those other guys and gals that are talking about the vulnerability and what it takes to get into the space and start getting back to managing better, to being better, and using each other as resources. Even if you don't meet them or know them, they're still out there trying to do their level best to open the door towards the landscape that suits you better.
I always felt that I was less of a man.
No, sir. No, sir. I got to stop you there.
Yeah.
It takes strength and courage to step in the door. That's why I always frame it as, hey, you've shown courage in the past. Show it now. You're worth it. You used to do it for a mission. Why don't you do it for yourself? That's not narcissism. That's self-care. And that's part of what we need to encourage too. It's not taking time away from somebody else. It's giving you time. It's giving you time. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I said I used to, but now I know it does take a lot of courage and a lot of bravery, to openly, talk about it. My kids know that I suffer from anxiety, and that's how I'm, a great father to them, because if they ever have any problems, in life, whether it be in school or if it's on the baseball diamond or at work, and they're going through some life struggles and challenges, they can look to me, and I help them too.
Wonderful.
Because we all go through the stressors of life. It's challenging. It's hard. Life is not easy. And at some point in your life, you're going to need some help. I mean,
we need example setters. We need real life people that we know that we can connect to either digitally or face to face, that are example setters, and they tell their honest story and the authentic methods that they used to go from, hey, I don't trust anybody, to, hey, I'm going to trust somebody, to, hey, I can trust myself, to, hey, I can trust some professionals, and then set the example. That's the best thing that we can do, is the best example setters that we can, wherever they are.
Mm-hmm.
Kick open the door and keep moving.
You are exactly right. I became obsessed in fixing Brian, because Brian suffers from physical pain every day and, and other ailments. And I promised myself 4 years ago, I was going to get up out of my chair and begin to get 1% better to take my life back. I've lost 70 pounds since. I walk every day, and albeit I'll walk half of my steps with horrible gait, can barely walk sometimes by the end of the day. And my kids and my wife say, why do you continue to do this? Why do you only eat one time a day? It's because I have to. I don't have a choice. If you want dad around to live another 20, 25, 30 years, I have to do this. Because if I don't, I'm done. Throw in the towel. I'll go back to my chair. I'll be 310 pounds and I'll live a life of hell, because I have to walk. I have to eat one meal a day. I have got to stay disciplined. Sometimes we get home late at night and they're eating a snack or they're throwing a pizza in the oven or whatever. And I'm like, you guys are killing me. I say that's not for me. That's not my food. That ain't for Brian. That ain't mine. So
that's the discipline. That's the discipline.
You got to be disciplined. Sometimes I don't want to have to go on a walk at 6:30 at night, after, a day of podcasting and a day of, responding to, 25, 26 emails of veterans that are hurting. And you got to, try to get in their shoes to try to help them. And, that's a lot of weight. But I still go on a walk, even though I don't want to. I said, babe, I only have 800 steps right now. I don't know how I'm going to get these other 9,000, but bye. And when I start, I tell myself, I'm just walking.
Yep.
Walk. Just put one foot in front of the other foot, and that's all it is you're walking. And that right there, you will find yourself, when you first start, walk to the mailbox and then walk a block, and then 2 and 3, and then all of a sudden,
it's the same thing that Jocko Willink and David Goggins, who are also superhuman personalities and beings, they all just say, just start. Start.
Yeah.
Goggins has a similar story to you. He started heavy and joined the SEALs, and now he's a superhuman being. So, and Willink Jocko is huge. And it's just starting the process, giving yourself permission, and then working your way into the discipline. And then, regardless of what happens, Stay as disciplined as you can. Don't give yourself any excuses. And be
Absolutely.
motivated by those people. Be motivated by the Bryans of the world, by the Jockos of the world, by the Gogginses of the world, by the whoever in the world. Just do it. I don't want to sound, too overpowering, but it is the small steps that you take. The ones to the mailbox. That's a great story. I started walking to the mailbox. Perfect.
That's what I did.
Perfect.
Yeah. Listen, it has been an honor to have you on the show. The work you're doing in the military and veteran community, sir, is truly, truly admirable.
The honor is mine. Thank you so much. Really, it's a privilege.
Yes, sir. Folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Until next time, for the Today with Tally podcast, this is Brian Tally. Good night, Semper Fi, and God bless.